Hello, good day, good evening, and good night. France still sucks, Iran is still a cunt, and we are still talking about World War One. This war dragged on longer than Vietnam times 10. Holy fuck, boys. What the fuck?
That's an accurate assessment. All right. And it's just that it's taking us long to go through it all. But it did not draw long. World War One was not as long as the Vietnam War.
It was only 4 years.
Yeah.
Only 4 years and like 50,000. Or no. How many millions died? I would say you'd put it in World War One, it'd be in the millions, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
no, literally millions of people died. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The Soviet or the Russians lost over a million and a half soldiers and plus 1 million civilians.
Yep.
The Germans lost close to 2 million people. The Austro-Hungarians lost another over 1 million. All right, I think that if I'm not mistaken, the French lost close to 1 million, and the British I think lost close to 500,000 people.
Bit more than that. We lost about 500,000 people.
But we are on to February and March 1917. The wheels of war continue to grind. Europe looks like a sausage factory. And by that I mean literally, you know, the meat grinder where it pops out the sausage in a tube or whatever. That's pretty much what's going on the Western Front, right? So now the United States is about to jump in and sick our fucking cock right up in that snatch. So go ahead, set the stage.
Okay. Well, we'll start with what begins the downfall, right? For the Germans. German unrestricted submarine warfare begins on January 31st. All right. Then you have the Norwegian government forbidding all foreign submarines to use Norwegian territories. Now, this is a German sub of the era of World War One, right? As you can see, it generally has 2 deck guns. This here is its normal wireless radio antenna. All right. Also, what you'll normally see are guide wires that come down to the front and into the bow to hold that. All right, but this is
how often did the U-boats run topside? Because they were mainly submerged, right?
No. Actually, the U-boats would only be submerged if they absolutely had to, because the batteries are very primitive, and they can only do like 3 to 5 knots submerged, whereas on the surface they could exceed 20 knots.
Yeah, the submarines for the most part ran on the surface, all right, until they were ready to move for an attack. Other than that, they ran on the surface.
So they were pretty much a glorified ironclad then, right? They're sitting low in the waterline. They got iron sides. It's pretty much a Civil War era iron side that can submerge, right?
Well, I mean, to an extent, but at the same time, they're not. Their purpose is the idea behind the submarines at the start of World War One was to use them as a general harassing force and as a scouting force. All right, for the main fleet. Now, the unrestricted warfare shows you that they've changed tactics now. Okay, that the Germans are now just saying, okay, go out there and be the hunters. Go out there and sink ships. Now,
well, this is where the Wolfpack mentality came about, right? Where the subs, they would go in 4 to 5 subs to a group, and they would surround and harass the enemy navy, right?
Not really yet, because technology still really isn't there to position and all this kind of stuff. However, what this does mean, and this is partially where America is starting to get dragged into this kicking and screaming because they're now targets regardless of where their ships are going and where they're found. is that now, instead of old rules of war where they were supposed to, in most cases, give the crew the opportunity to surrender, at least get in the lifeboats or something along those lines before they shot them, now they don't even have to surface. They can just plod along. Oh, there's a ship. We'll just submerge for a bit, lob a torpedo. Yep, we got him. Now we'll just see you later.
Well, mainly
Well,
because
this is where this is where the tactics really start to change on the U-boats. Before unrestricted submarine warfare, they mostly just used deck guns. They'd warn you, hey, get off, and then the crew gets off, and then they just put a few rounds to the deck gun. And now it's exclusively torpedoes.
Well, they would do that with supposed merchant ships. The problem, of course, is that the merchant ships, there's plenty of armed merchant ships. They're basically Q ships.
Yep.
So a submarine showing up thinking it's going to hit a merchant ship, and all of a sudden it's a Q ship. They've like, okay, well we can't do that. There was not that same philosophy for the submarines when they were attacking what was obviously a warship. Okay, so what do you do then about something that's in the middle ground? You have a merchant ship, or is it a merchant ship, or is it a warship? Well, it's kind of sort of both. All right. So at that point, how do you tell when you're dealing with just a straight merchantman or an armed merchantman? All right. Especially when they're trying to disguise the armed merchantman as just it's a merchantman. All right. So,
okay. Well, let's get to the political aspect here, MC.
Well,
Sorry to cut you off.
Let me finish one more thing off before I get to the political aspect. The other thing about this, you got to remember, this is World War I. All right, they don't have the range on the submarines for attacking. Okay, for example, there was only one attack off the Canadian coast. All right, during the entire war. Right, so they're really limited to around, the British Isles. They can go to either side of the British Isles and a little bit into the Atlantic, but they're not patrolling the Atlantic like they're going to do in World War II. All right, now
that is true, but the fact remains, okay, Germany is hedging its bets at this point. They're saying, hey, look, the United States is going to join the war. I'm sorry, but they've already assumed we are going to join the war on the British side. They are assuming this at the point where they go back to unrestricted submarine warfare. And what they are betting on is they could starve out Britain before the United States can mobilize. Did they even have a chance of doing that?
I don't think that's what it was. All right, you got to remember the United States is coming off of, at this situation, what just recently happened from the United States. You just recently had Woodrow Wilson, all right, attempt to say, I'll broker a peace deal between the European powers. Let me be the peacemaker. They're not thinking that necessarily that the United States will declare war on them. All right, they know it's a danger. All right, to do this, but at the same time, they're desperate because they themselves and their population now are getting tired. They're feeling the brunt. You got to remember, the Russians in 1916 kicked the holy crap out of the Austro-Hungarians. If it wasn't for the Germans coming in to save their bacon, all right, the Austro-Hungarians would have already been out of the war. But mobilizing German troops all over the place is not that's taxing them, and that's taxing their population to its furthest extent.
So they had to know that pushing unrestricted submarine warfare would drive the Americans into the war. We are trading with both sides of this fight, and if you're going to start sinking American vessels, you will drag us into the war. We cannot just stand idly by.
Well, I think that they're also looking at it from the standpoint of there is no such thing as an American army. From their perspective, there's not. So what's the most that the Americans can do? Send in shipping. They're sending shipping in anyway, right?
I get it. No one knew they were going to wake the sleeping giant that was the United States. Nobody knew that we would mobilize as quickly as we did. Nobody understood that.
World War II, how we mobilized in World War One versus how we mobilized in World War II, two different things. We mobilized very slowly in World War One.
That is true. But still, even the arms industry, the shipping to Great Britain when we actually became their ally, that was the biggest boon to their war effort, and that was fairly rapidly. We were able to do that quick.
Well, we already had the civilian arms industry, and also the Lee Enfield and the Russian Mosin, Russian 1889 Mosins are very simple.
Isn't that when we started making the Springfield rifle also and shipping that over?
The Springfield rifle was actually adopted in 1903, and the cartridge was modified in 1906.
Yep.
But we were not completely tooled for that. Basically, there were only 2 or 3 armories here in the States that made it, and that was back in the days of your government-run armory made your military's rifles, not a civilian contractor.
And the Springfield 03 was actually a licensed version of the Mauser K98, the Carabiner 98, which was made in World War First design. 1898.
Well, when you're thinking of the K98, you're thinking of the K98B, the Carabiner 98 Kurz, which was the Second World War. That's just a shortened version of the K98B, which is basically Gewehr 98 with different sights and a downturn bolt handle. But all 3 share identical actions, which was designed by Paul Mauser and his brother in 1898.
The United States arms industry was able to ship arms rapidly. We also had pilots at the ready. We did not have the planes though, so we were flying British aircraft, British airframes. But we also had the pilots.
What we were able to ship, all right, immediately, all right, over to the British, all right, when we do enter the war, is we were able to ship pre-processed metal. Okay, we were able to ship steel, all right, tons and tons of steel. And yes, tons and tons of explosive powder, all right, that we also shipped by the tons. Okay, I mean that's where our in World War I, that was our main objective. And we didn't just ship it to Great Britain, we also were able to ship it to France, because believe it or not, France's armories were superior to American armories at this point in the war. At this point in the war.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Well, no, that's fine.
But going back to the Springfield 03, I mentioned this previously, but yeah, fun fact and laughable anecdote is that the license was revoked during World War One, where the government goes, "No, fuck this. This is war appropriations. We're not paying." Mauser a bloody thing now. And after the war, Mauser found out and went, "No, hang on, you made a whole bunch of my rifles under license and you didn't pay me royalties and all this." And the US government went, "Blow it out your bum." So Mauser took him to court, and the court ruled that no, in fact, he couldn't actually blow it out his bum, and he was owed an exorbitant amount.
So anyway, let's get back to the timeline for a second here. On the 3rd of February, 2 days later, the United States severs all diplomatic relations with Germany. All right, and then you have the affairs of the Siwa Oasis.
MC, don't jump over the severing of diplomatic ties. That has to be a shot across the bow of Germany. Germany, like you just got done saying, hedged their bets thinking the United States wants peace. They're not going to do anything. The United States throws up its hands and goes, "You know what? We will no longer even talk to you." That is the step before war.
Well, no, the unrestricted submarine warfare, you could say, the step before war. It is a prelude to war. It's like coming anywhere near the place and we'll fucking sink you, and knowing that people are coming near the place. That's the point where you're like the unrestricted part declaration is where you guys really do get screaming and kicking, whether you like it or not, into the war.
Right. Well, there's a reason I was skipping over because we're going to be talking about it again in a little bit later anyway. Yeah. Salid Halim, the Turkish Grand Vizier, resigns and is succeeded by the Talat Pasha. The affairs of the Siwa Oasis and what we're talking about, just so people know, you're talking about this area here, right, on the Eastern Desert. And basically what it is it's a quick skirmish with British forces where the British say, look, as long as you obey us, you can do whatever the hell you want. If you want to learn more about the Siwa area, it is an interesting area, right? That was an interesting history archaeologically, right? But I know this isn't the place to talk about that. But basically, then what the British would do is they would send a few war patrols in those areas, but nothing more than just some old style airplane flights, and a few armored cars roaming around every now and then. Just some general patrols. Nothing at this point now. They basically said, okay, this area here is now pacified. British operations in the Sensuya come to an end. That's also part of the Siwa Oasis issue. And then you have the Scandinavian government's joint protest against the German submarine warfare. Gets published. Now, this is kind of interesting because, everyone knows this issue by the Germans has rankled. It is really a rankling the world. It shows you just how the world really viewed unrestricted submarine warfare at this time. They looked at it as absolutely heinous. All right, we don't have that view. We don't look at it the same way. Now, part of that's because of World War II, all right, and the fact that we did the exact same actions as the Germans did during World War I, and obviously. But a lot of it is because it was a change in the traditions of warfare, all right, that people had come to expect, all right, and took for granted. And of course, this is all now going to the wayside. Then you have, on the 14th, the British government informed the Japanese government that they will support the claims to German possessions north of the equator in the Pacific if it's understood that Japan will support similar British claims south of the equator. And the British government gives a pledge in the House of Commons to the restitution of the Alsace-Lorraine as an object of the war.
Alsace.
All right, Alsace range. You want to talk about that, Farty?
No, not really. I don't really know.
This is what you're looking at in 1918. Is generally this is what you have. Japan is taking this area. Obviously, it's taking Korea. Obviously, it's taking Formosa. All right. The United States is already in the Philippines. We already have Guam. We already have Wake. You see, we have Midway and the Leeward Islands over here as part of this. You see a couple of areas of American Samoa, right? But what you're seeing here is see how you got German Samoa, right? This is then given over to the British, all right? Because right about here is the equator. It's right around this area. Okay, so the British are able to basically snatch up all the German possessions south of the equator, while north of the equator they all go to Japan. Do you have any questions on this?
Where did babies come from?
Where did babies come from? And what you're looking at, just so you know, obviously Great Britain, Grossa Britannia, Frankenreich is French, which is this area, right? Obviously you see Japan, and you're seeing the Japan exclusion zone. Rusland, Portugal has this one little spot down here. Right, the Netherlands still maintain these islands. Now, this is a surprise to me that the Netherlands still maintain these islands throughout the war. All right, and then of course you have the United States. Eingetta Staaten. So this is a German map, just so you know. Okay. The Australian War Government formed. Farty, just exactly how long were you going to be part of the war before you formed a war government?
Well, remember, we're 2 months away from this was supposed to be over by Christmas. So obviously it's not going to be over by any fucking Christmas. So this looks like it's going to be in it for the long run. So we may as well form a separate government that's going to deal with conscription, training, deployment, requisitions and all this kind of stuff, and possibly even looking at now going into rationing as well.
Okay. Then you have the Inter-Allied Conference, the Commission on Retaliament. I don't even know what that means. And Petrograd dissolves. Kut is reoccupied by the British forces, and for what we're looking at there, all right, this is what you're basically looking at. You have Kut right here. The British forces are now on the march, and basically it's a rush now to take Baghdad, all right, and push the Turks completely out of this region. All right, the Turks are in retreat, the Ottoman Turks. The German forces withdraw from frontline positions and begin the withdrawal to the Hindenburg line. And this is what they're setting up, is they're actually all along here, all right, and they're just pulling back right up to here, all right? Now, what they've done is while they maintain these forces here, they've started setting up really thick and real powerful defensive fortifications all along this area. All right, and this is what they call the Hindenburg line. All right, so it looks like they're giving up. When you think about it, they're giving up a lot of territory here. I mean, a significant amount of territory. You're talking a good 20 miles in some places that they're giving up. All right, just so that they can create a more stable and a stronger defensive line. All right, it's at this point that they've determined that they're going to have to beat the Russians first. All right, so they're trying to realign their war commitments, all right, completely to now hurry up, crush the Russians, and then we'll come back and deal with what's going to happen on the Eastern Front. And at the same time, they're trying to send out peace feelers.
Real quick, Jensen is in the chat, and he said, MC, go check your DMs in Discord. So he sent you something.
Okay,
more dirty pictures.
And real quick, what time and when in February does the February Revolution begin in Russia?
You'll see that it's kind of going on about the people are arguing about it, but you'll start to see the effects coming up soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it happens in February.
Smart ass.
Right.
When was the February Revolution? March.
I was already talking about the pursuit to Baghdad, a German destroyer raid on the Marguerite and Broadstairs, and then you have the SS Laconia sunk by submarine. All right, now this is what they sank. Right, this is this is ostensibly an ocean liner.
Uh-huh.
It's also an armed merchant ship.
Well,
exactly what you were getting to earlier. The lines between the two have been blurred severely.
And it is how do I say this? For whatever reason, it's still a passenger liner. Okay, there are still a lot of passengers. There's like 200 passengers on this ship.
Really?
And 3 of them are Americans that die. Okay, So this becomes a huge issue. Now, I cannot understand, okay, I cannot understand what people were thinking, all right, in going to Great Britain into a war zone where they know it's a war zone, they know it's unrestricted warfare, why you would book passage on this ship. But the ship is sunk. It is sunk by submarine, where the submarine stayed submerged the entire time. It put a torpedo, one torpedo in the stern of the ship, all right, and it's affecting the engines. And they worked on it. It wasn't sinking then until it got hit with a second torpedo and then went down. As you can see, the result of this is President Wilson goes to Congress and asks for power to arm merchant ships.
Not only that, and the next day, get to that.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that. But the Anglo-French conference assembles in Calais to discuss operations, the cooperation and coordination with the French commanders-in-chief. President Wilson states that he considers the sinking of Laconia an overt act for which he was waiting. In other words, he's looking for this.
Right. This is now the final step before actually stating an act of war. Therefore, we are now at war officially. This is an overact. This is now okay, for that, we're arming our ships, we're defending ourselves, and if you fucking attack us again, we're going to war with you, pretty much.
And then you have, on February 28th, the Zimmerman telegram. All right, and you end up with this. Germany seeks an alliance against the United States, asks Japan and Mexico to join her. Full text of her proposal made public. Brought to you.
Well, no, and MC, let's be real about this. This is the type of coup that happened when Benjamin Franklin released the governor of Massachusetts's papers, right? It's the same type of scandal, okay? That's the level we got going on here. And the fact that the British just happened to come across it and lay it out for us is highly suspect. Highly suspect.
And it so happens that the Germans just declared unrestricted submarine warfare and just fucking sunk an American ship. And, just so happened that this got released at the same time, which we actually knew about for over a month. Yeah. Just so happens, eh? This is what you do.
Yeah, this is a build-up, and to be honest, I fully do believe that the Germans did this. All right, it fits with how they operate. All right, this is the kind of promises the kind of diplomacy. You got to remember they're under the diplomacy mentality still, even though he's dead, of Bismarck. Okay, where you use the velvet the velvet glove over the iron fist. All right, that's how they approach these things. So I literally have no doubt that this was an actual thing. That I don't think that this was just a made up story by the British.
Well, at this point, we don't really need to lie. I mean, you're one step from doing it anyways. We don't really have to push you at this point. You're fucking almost there, and the Germans are only a matter of fucking minutes away from fucking things up beyond all recognition and finally giving you the shits to the point where you're like, right, that's it, hold my beer.
Well, he's not wrong here. All right. You see the British ship in March now. Yeah, the British hospital ship is hit by a mine. Western Persia is captured by Russian forces. The passage to Dilia, near Baghdad, and then you have Count Zeppelin dies. Now this is a obviously Zeppelin, the man who created the heavier than air ships that most people recognize as far as like the Hindenburg, right?
Lighter than air.
On his design. Yeah, lighter than air. Thank you. Thank you. But this was this was a beloved figure in Germany, and they went in the morning. Baghdad falls, all right. Shira, Kirmanshah, all right, falls to the Russians again. The Allies begin to free monastir in Macedonia, and then you have what good old Falcon here was talking about. The Russian Revolution begins. All right, and what you see here is you see some Russian deserters trying to leave, and you see one of the Russian officers saying, "I'm going to butt stroke you if you don't get back in the line." But even if you're looking at the mutiny that's taking place here with the soldiers, at the same time, you've got this going on in the major cities. All right, they're starving. There's bread lines. The czar has tried to allow the nobles back there to try and fix things themselves, and he even orders the Cossacks to disperse the protesters, and it just makes things worse. Okay, and so basically you now have Russia tottering on the edge of dissolution. At the same time, they were making progress against the Persians. The United States government announces they're going to arm all merchant vessels in a war zone. Notice.
Well, we don't
have unarmed merchant vessels. We're arming them all.
Well, no, it's really interesting too. When governments put out, hey, oh my God,
good God, that's
children, like they're murdering each other over nothing. It's almost like World War I. Anyway, it's really interesting when the governments put out these edicts, right? They're like, okay, we're going to arm every vessel that is going into a war zone. Where's the war zone? The whole world. Why don't you just say you're arming every vessel?
I was just about to point that out. With unrestricted submarine warfare, well, define where the submarines are.
Well, the thing is, at this point in time, the subs really have a limited range, so it's more around the British Isles and the French Isles.
Obviously, MC, remember, this is time of war. It's not like, we know what the Germans are actually doing all the bloody time. What if they made some sort of stealth submarine that we don't know about? They could go fucking 10,000 miles on one tank of fuel,
Yeah, and all that is true. For the most part, what they're saying is that the government here is saying that it's going to supply weapons, okay, to merchant vessels that are going back and forth to Europe. It's not saying you can't arm your merchant ship that's going down to Brazil, but they're just saying that they will give you arms if you're going to the European theater. That's really what this is saying. Okay.
Wait a minute. Nowadays, the government's trying to take guns. Back then, they were handing them out for free. What the hell happened?
Yeah, that's an accurate assessment.
And you wonder where the reputation came from, like your first time going to America back in the 1910s, and it's like, oh, you got a boat? Here, have some guns.
Here's the stamp for your passport, and here's a rifle.
Well, they were putting small cannons on these merchants.
Yeah, he's a 3-inch deck gun.
Exactly. All right.
He's a 3-inch deck gun and 100 rounds of ammunition. See you later.
Anglo-French conference assembles in London to discuss relations of British and French commanders. The employment of prisoners of war in the fighting zones. Prince Brooklyn, the Russian premier, is removed from office by the Revolutionary Party on the 13th of March. General Beazet, Russian Minister of War, is removed from office by the Revolutionary Party. German forces withdraw from the Somme sector back to the Hindenburg Line. All right,
I think you would wrap that up with a general German fallback position to the Hindenburg Line, right?
Yeah.
Because that's going to keep popping up in this timeline. So I would put a blanket on it. They fall back.
Okay.
Yes.
The fall, but see, what's interesting about this fallback is they're doing it, and the Allies are not. They're not making them pay for it. Okay, they're seeing them withdraw, but they're not immediately going, okay, if you're going to withdraw, let's see if we can turn it into a rout. You understand what I'm saying?
This is what what you'd actually call a tactical withdrawal. They're giving up a weaker position for a stronger one that they've defended prior.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be like, okay, let's go to something I know well, the Civil War. Okay, Gettysburg. If Lee would have took the advice of his generals and repositioned to the road headed towards D.C. and took a stronger position, that is what the Germans are doing right now. They are learning from Lee's mistake and actually falling back on their own terms.
They're not learning from Lee's mistake. Lee could not have done what you're trying to tell him that he could do.
Well, whatever, but you get my point, though, right? They are falling back.
Again.
Oh, shut up. That's not even what I'm saying.
No, you are correct. They are moving back into a more powerful defensive and more defensible position. That is true.
Yeah, it's kind of like my old job, right? Like, yeah, I'd be across the river covering engineers as they're building a bridge pretty much. And then once they've built the bridge and then the infantry come along, I fall back to a reserve position again, waiting for the next obstacle we've got to cover them with. So it's kind of like that. You know, the Hindenburg line was being built up whilst the advanced troops were in the makeshift trenches and stuff like that. And then whilst a lot of engineers were building up the defensive positions in safety, once they'd done that, then the troops just basically withdraw from their covering positions back to these defensive positions where they'll retake up their covering positions. Understand? Clear as mud?
Clear as mud. Anyway, back to the Civil War if you want to talk about mud. But no,
Oh no, we got plenty of the song. We'll sell you some.
Oh, he didn't get the joke, MC. I'm guessing you got it, right?
Well, I didn't even hear it, to be honest.
Oh,
mute your Falcon.
What? Sorry.
Yeah. Put the Cheetos away.
Actually, what's funny? I forgot y'all could hear that. I was munching on some dry cereal.
Share some with the class.
So anyway, you have another skirmish in the Mesopotamia as they move forward, as the British continue to move forward. The new provisional government is proclaimed in Russia. China severs diplomatic relations with Germany, but that's not a huge issue. And then finally, Nicholas II, Tsar of Russia, abdicates.
And here's the problem when it comes to Russia. They start to infiltrate their own military with these revolutionaries. And they start to take a bureaucratic approach to warfare. And they really shoot themselves in the goddamn foot. Right? I mean, the shit gets ridiculous.
It does get ridiculous. Let's let me throw this up here real quick here.
And you know what I'm talking about when I say they take a bureaucratic approach to it, right? Because
This is Tsar Nicholas. The provisional government initially is a democratic government, and they agree, and you'll see this, they're going to have conferences with the allies to continue the war. All right. The problem is that continuing the war is just it's just all talk. I mean, as far as, you can say you can continue the war, but all it's going to do is continue the bloodshed. All right. All it's going to do is continue the bleeding of the troops. It's not going to alleviate anything. Just because you declare a new government doesn't, miraculously change the fact that logistically you have no way of supplying the troops. Right. So it doesn't. It's a great, wonderful thing, all right, to say you're going to continue the war, but the war has put all this pressure out for food and everything else. But the problem, while you can blame the nobles for mismanagement and the corruption, just because you say, okay, we got a new government here, doesn't change any of that overnight. It doesn't fix everything. And you can see how they're also how they're trying to just put people in place, saying, okay, we got a new war minister, we got a new foreign minister, we have a new premier. All right, but is it really fixing anything?
Well, you know what I don't get? Sorry about yawning there, but you know what I don't get? I understand the fact that Rasputin was just assassinated. I get that the Tsar is in a tenuous position politically. I understand that. All right. But when you look at the war, Russia was finally winning until they fucking do this, right? They were finally winning the war, and then they fucked themselves over.
Yes and no. All right, they had been winning against the Austro-Hungarians, but now the Austro-Hungarians are backed by the Germans, and they're no longer able to continue their offensives against the Germans. They're still able to push the Turks, okay, but their great ally Romania has collapsed against the Hungarians. Okay, so when you look at it, it's like, it's just turning into a nightmare for them as well. Because while once again they were winning against the Austro-Hungarians, against the Germans, their offensives in the north against the Germans are just turned into a meat grinder. They've just been freaking just absolute disasters.
Yeah, but couldn't they take a page from the Germans and create their own Hindenburg line? I mean, do they really need Moscow, right? Okay, put up your defense at St. Petersburg and your main pockets, and then let them take as much territory as they can hold, because you're going to stretch their line thin, winter's going to hit, and you're going to crush them. Right? This is Russia, dude.
Russia World War I, not World War II. You don't have the mechanization yet, all right, in Russia, all right, to ease. In fact, what you have is mechanization on the side of the Germans and almost no mechanization on the side of the Russians.
Even during the Second World War, when you did have some mechanization, it took a long time to get that going. And a lot of it was
what my argument is simple. Let the Russian winter beat your enemy.
Yeah, but the Russian winter beat their enemy. All right, this is not Nazi Germany in World War II. All right, this is World War I. What are the lacking? What are the Russians lacking? Okay, the Russians are lacking artillery. In order to assault a position, you need artillery. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're sending waves of men into the enemy with heavy artillery, and a lot of it. And that's the Germans. Okay?
They're actually the Russians are still actually lacking in machine guns at this point.
Yes. The Russians are not equipped for a war at all. All right? Yes, they've been giving up land. Yes, they've given up a lot of territory. All right? Basically, they give up the Ukraine, the whole Galicia campaign. All right, they've given up all of Poland and so forth.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just I'm wondering if you pretty much play hide and seek with the German military. And what I mean by that is you do a staying operation, right? And you try and outmaneuver them, even with no mechanization. You disappear into the wilderness. And you spread them.
It's faster than you are.
Not if you're using small mobile units. Even if you're on horseback, it's a small unit.
They do. How do you don't have? What do you consider a mobile unit?
See, like that kind of like. Remember, we're still building on tactics and all this kind of stuff. Small mobile actions and guerrilla warfare and all this thing will not become a thing for a lot later. Remember, the mindset is large armies coming into a glorious battle and all this kind of shit. They're not thinking about sneak attacks. I mean, like the British thought snipers at this point were fucking bloody thugs and criminals and scumbags in the battlefield and all this kind of stuff. They even thought of submarines as the same thing as ungentlemanly and all this kind of shit. So the mindset is definitely not there for small unit action. And then there's also the lack of equipment and all this kind of stuff that you really do need for small unit action. At least one radio per group and all this kind of stuff. Communication between everybody would be nice. But you need accurate mapping, you need coordination between these smaller units. The Russians didn't have any radios at all. They didn't have enough machine guns for like fire teams and all this kind of stuff to deploy, and they simply just did not have the command structure and the competent command ability to perform those kinds of actions, even if they really, really wanted to. And then simply too, the mindset just was not there at the time. So
well, I'm wondering though, you guys are arguing to me that they couldn't let the Russian winter set in and do the fighting for them. I would like to now point at Napoleon's attempt at Russia and sit down.
You're not dealing with Napoleon. All right, you're not dealing with Hitler. You're not dealing with the logistics, all right, from Napoleon's time, and you're not dealing with the stupidity of Hitler, who thought that the war would be over in a month, that Russia would, all they had to do was pick Russia twice, and Russia would completely collapse. That was his attitude, all right? So he didn't even prepare the troops for winter. The only reason that the troops of Germany suffered in the first winter, all right, was simply because the logistics. Hitler had no plan for a winter logistic for his troops whatsoever when he ordered them to go. That's not the same thing that you're dealing with right now. They are fully aware of the German winters, all right? In fact, they're better at handling the winter than the Russians are from the perspective of, in a defensive position, they have artillery. You know what snow doesn't have? Snow doesn't have artillery. So even if you're cold and you're freezing, when you've got big guns and enough food, guess what? You win.
Yeah, and as MC brought up, this is how poorly fucking prepared for a winter war that the Russians were. It was, in fact, they were the ones that were in a deficit of cold weather gear, not the Germans.
Okay, also, with, the Russians, you have the upheaval in, the serfs and in the countryside. You have, committees being formed within military units, where it's becoming a bureaucracy, and the army itself starts to, disintegrate. They start to leave in mass.
Right. Well, yes, that's what I was demonstrating is they themselves have started to mutiny because of the poor leadership. Now, a lot of people get sacked, okay, and new leadership is placed on them by the provisional government. But the provisional government is the people that they're putting in place are really not any better prepared to deal with the situation, simply because they still don't, whether you like it or not, you still don't have food. You still don't have the logistics chain. You still don't have the armaments, all right, to deal with the German war machine. And the German war machine is far superior at this point.
And once again, on top of that, as I was saying before, with the small unit action, that the Russians simply didn't have the competent command and control structure to do something like that. They definitely don't have the command and control structure that's competent enough, that can be trusted enough, that can keep all of their men together and not mutiny themselves, and then deal with this immense task of trying to supply support logistics and all this kind of stuff on all of these men that may very well not be there in strength tomorrow because half them fucked off.
Exactly. Just from a perspective of radios, they didn't have lots of radios, and you have to have a tremendous number of them in order to try to pull off some small, like have a squad of men go over here, a squad go over here, and coordinate the two.
And I don't know whether you ever remember switchboards or anything like that, where telephones used to use switchboards and shit like that. But like we've used K phones and switchboards back when I was in the army, when we were like in a platoon harbour for a good deal of time, or something along those lines. We'd have like K phones running out from the gun pits into the command post and maybe into the next platoon, all this kind of shit, and then into headquarters platoon running around. But it does take a fair while for you to, fucking, Golf Papa 1, you put me through to HQ actual, something like that. And then fucking, they've got to click into fucking what's here and then get on the HQ's fucking switchboards. Like, can you go get fucking HQ Alpha or something like that? Or HQ fucking actual. And then they've got to go off and get him if he's not in the fucking CP or something like that. So can you imagine, like, across Russia, where you're trying to have your logistics, which are mainly telephone wires, they could be fucking sabotaged or shelled or anything at any point in time. That's got to go through several switchboards in that kind of a fashion and manner, and then fucking get your message across, and that could be fucking hundreds and hundreds of miles away being Russia.
Well, thank you, Farty.
And there's no guarantee that that'll happen.
I would argue that you could do militia actions and have runners. This is World War One. They would still be utilizing.
I want you to think about what's in there, and I want you to also remember at this time frame you're dealing with what? Russian winter, right?
Yeah.
You're going to sit up there and send runners in the Russian winter.
Well, they did in fact use motorbike messengers and horseback messengers. The only problem with those is that if something happens to them on the way, you don't really know whether the message got across.
Yeah,
so
with the Russians, you don't have motorcycles.
Yeah, that's true too.
You don't have the equipment. You just don't have it. The idea that you've got a mobile force with the Russians is totally inaccurate. The Russians are basically infantry only. They have very little artillery and not enough of it.
And no trucks.
And they've never. And what's worse is they never concentrated the way they need to. In fact, one of the problems that the Russians have is at the beginning of the war, when they first went on the offensive against the Germans, when the Germans did their two big freaking sweep movements, right, at the Battle of Tannenberg, they captured probably half of all of Russia's artillery. They don't have
I do have a question though. If we're gonna play hindsight is 2020, if Russia would have known the United States would enter the war and they would have held out, and the Tsar did not advocate, do you believe that they could have funneled troops and ammunition through Alaska into Russia and propped them up?
Well, remember, this is the provisional government. The provisional government. This is not the communist revolution. That hasn't happened yet. Okay.
Well, also too, there's a great logistical challenge of going from Alaska through to that part of Russia and all that kind of stuff. There's a reason why they didn't do it in World War II, is because it took too long. It was easy to go across the Atlantic up around north of Scandinavia and in that way, because it was also just deploying the resources where it was needed instead of going.
Yeah, well, that is correct. You don't have the logistics all the way, the logistic capability of supplying.
Exactly, and just think of getting this stuff.
We're talking about a packet of ammunition going across Russia. It'll take 6 fucking months, whereas it'll take about 3 weeks going across the Atlantic. And
also, just think about trying to get a bunch of stuff up to Alaska itself. That's going to take weeks by boat. And if you're thinking, oh, we'll just drive it up there, guys, the Alaska Highway didn't exist until the mid-'60s.
yeah, and another thing too is strategically, America didn't realistically have to actually help Russia, because simply joining on the on the Anglo side of things relieved pressure on Russia to a point where they could just easily walk over the Germans. The Germans were well and truly on the back foot by that stage.
I mean, you don't really even have the Trans-Siberian Railroad at this point.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't have a connection for this kind of logistics to take place. You just don't have it. It's just not available.
Yeah.
Right. So let's go on. Action between the German raider Leopard and the HMS Achilles. All right, an armed boarding steamer Dundee and an armed boarding steamer Dundee. The Leopard is sunk. You have a mutiny breaking out in the Baltic Fleet. Okay, so this is what you were talking about before, Mad Dodge, where you have committees where people are trying to form basic all military discipline is breaking down into these freaking war committee things that are happening on ships. All right, Roy is occupied by the French forces. This is due to the obviously the withdrawal of the Germans back to the Hindenburg Line, I believe.
Bapaume.
All right, is occupied by British forces. The German airship L-39 is destroyed at Compiègne when returning from a raid on England. Canard or Carind, I'm sorry, is occupied by Russian forces. Mr. Briand is French premier and foreign minister affairs resigns. All right, so more chaos in the French, because the French military is having huge issues. All right, General Roch of the French Minister of War also resigns. And then you have the German destroyer raid on Ramsgate and Broadstairs. Pellerin and Noyon is occupied by Allied forces. Then you have the French battleship Dalton, sunk by submarine in the Mediterranean. And that's this warship. Now, this, believe it or not, even though it's got these side turrets here, is actually, this was laid down, all right, just a few years before the war. This is one of the more modern French warships. All right, and you can see it's still got certain aspects of the old design. You see how the water line is here. All right, but this was, I think, completed in 1909. Okay, or 1912. I'm sorry, 1912. So it's fairly modern for a battleship. I mean, it takes a while for a battleship to be, when a keel is laid, for it to actually go out onto the water. Correct, Marty?
In times of war, you can build a battleship in almost under a year. I mean, the Iowas were built. I think they were in service 43 or something like that. No, they were only laid down as a result of Pearl Harbor. It all depends. You'd find that the design aesthetic was probably a budgetary issue at the time. They probably didn't have the money to design your new fast sort of dreadnought type dealio things, or your post dreadnought battleship. Funnily enough, though, the part of the point of your post-dreadnought battleship was that it was a redefine and a refinement of internal structures as well. So it combines like your boilers and your engineering and all that kind of stuff into one area, which combines all your ventilation and all this kind of stuff into a smaller package, which now you can encumber into a smaller citadel. Improvements in your munitions handling and all that kind of stuff, where that's now more refined, and once again decreasing the size of your internal citadel, which decreases your weight and the size of the actual ship, the amount of machinery that you need. Because remember, like, the more turrets that you've got, the more machinery and handling that you need, and the more weak spots that you'll have to have in your citadel to ship the ammunition outside of it. So in this case here, you've got the 3, 6, 8 turrets. So there's all that machinery that you've got to haul all of this heavy weaponry and this kind of stuff around the ship.
Well, what's interesting about this philosophy is you can tell that this design philosophy is for the ships closing in on the enemy, straight toward the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
This is not, they're not looking to go broadside to broadside. They're looking to go right toward the enemy, firing all guns.
In fact, no, that is still broadside mentality. Because, like, if you have a look at all the secondary weapons, this still has the tertiary mentality, which means that they're expecting to get right up close and possibly even board.
Well, but if you take a look at this, as they're advancing, they've literally got 10 guns firing forward.
Mm.
This ship is supposed to overwhelm as it's moving towards you to attack. It's not meant to move towards you and then do a 90-degree turn, right, and then open fire.
Well, no, and what's interesting to me too is full head of steam, right? I don't think there is one, but below the waterline, there's not a ram, is there? Because I could totally see this ship opening fire and being like the CSS Virginia and just ramming them.
The amount of steel at the front of this thing is enough to cut like a submarine in half without even damaging the bow.
It can cut a submarine in half. What Dodge was talking about was that, yes, battleships prior to this one did used to have a ramming bow, which was a prow underneath the bow that was designed to hole a ship underneath the waterline. And you could tell those because they had a sloping backwards bow on them. They sloped backwards towards the bridge. Now, by this point in time, you've now got double hulls and fucking torpedo bubbles and lots of armor plating below the waterline, and trying to hull a ship would just do as much damage to you as what you'd do to it.
Yeah, these are the torpedo blisters right here. Right along this. You can see the torpedo blisters right here. That's what this is.
Now, with this ship in the position that it's in, it goes to show a fair point where you're right. You got upwards of 2, 4, 6, 8 guns, or 10 guns, if you moved around a little bit more, firing at a semi-broadside. So he's not showing a full broadside there, and this is what they've coined the term tank bowing.
I'm assuming that these here are matched on the other side, all right? And so this rear turret couldn't fire toward the bow, but this all 8 of these guns on here and these 2 guns could definitely fire forward. That's what I was referring to.
Now, well, this maneuver can be done whilst you're moving towards the enemy, and it's a better way of getting more guns to bear. Now, the next model up from this, those guns that are out on the wings, what you'll find, they'll put them between the stacks. So you'll have most of the guns at first. They'll have them offset, so you'll have one turret sitting out on one side of the wing, and then another turret sitting further behind out on the opposite wing. And then when they put them down the center line, they realise that, well, in some cases, you can't get all your turrets to bear forward and backwards. And this is then when they started pursuing the whole point of where do we put the turrets? Like not in the center line of the ship, not out in the wings, but down the center line, front and rear. And then they found that bow tanking in that position there, you get like all your turrets to bear, and in forward chase, you can have most of your gun turrets sitting forwards, and you get all your arc of fire exactly the same, but without the penalty of your superstructure getting in the way.
Okay, let's go back and let's continue on now. The 20th of March, you have Robot succeeds Brand as the French Premier and Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Peliev is appointed the French Minister of War. And then you have the first meeting of the Imperial War Conference. What is this referring to, Parfardi? Is this just the imperial as the British imperial? This means a war conference with all the British Empire. You know, Australia,
Yes.
India.
Yeah, parts of Africa, Canada.
Not the United States, because we beat
You're not
you.
a part of the Empire.
Yeah, that's right. We beat you. We won. I just want you to remember.
You want a part. You don't want a part of the Empire, but you still want a bitch that we're having a fucking sook about the only part of the Empire that you have at the moment, which was fucking Meghan bloody Markle. There. You don't want an empire. Fuck off. You don't.
Hey, fuck you and your drop bear. Anyway, go ahead and continue, MC.
The British hospital ship, Austrias, is torpedoed off start point. Now, this is really kind of a sucky kind of a thing, because you're shooting hospital ships. They have big red crosses on them, and you're basically shooting them in the the Dover Strait.
Okay, MC, when was the Red Cross actually founded, and did they have a giant red cross on the ship?
Civil War, yes, they had big red crosses on these ships.
So, if you are targeting a hospital ship, you know damn well what you're targeting, correct?
Dude, it's a white ship with a giant red cross on it.
Unless you're doing it at night, then the answer is yes. You know what you're looking for.
Do you consider that a war crime?
A war crime? It's close. It's close.
Yes, absolutely, it's a war crime. In actual fact, they were painted beige with a big white square with a big red cross. And yes, the Red Cross is an internationally recognised fucking war relief sort of kind of thing.
That's all true, but the problem is whether or not somebody was using these kinds of ships to ship.
Yep. Thank you, MC. MC, that was gonna be my next question. Because if I'm gonna smuggle weapons, I'm gonna have a beige ship with a big fucking red cross on it, homie. You know what I'm saying?
That is also technically a war crime.
But that's regardless, because effectively you're not allowed to treat them as a combatant. They're neutral. The same with Red Cross members. That's why they're allowed to send packages and go and check on war criminals and shit like that. Oh, sorry, not war criminals, POWs and stuff.
They are not. You're correct. Farty is correct about that. But the reality is that it's a nicety of war, and Ain't Jack is exactly right in what he says, which is it's only a war crime if you lose.
But also too, the part of the point is because they are neutral. It's like those funny laws where you're not allowed to fuck a squirrel in your own home between the hours of 10:30 and 10:45.
No, I'm not gonna shut up this time, Farty.
Fucking finished. Shut up.
I don't care about your squirrel joke. I'm not gonna shut up this time. No.
I'm fucking done. Fuck's sake.
Okay.
Stop being a doku, fuck ya.
No, I'm not trying to be a doku.
What's your annoying point then?
My annoying point is simple. If you ever seen the movie Lord of War, okay, I'm not allowed to sell a military gunship helicopter. Okay, I take off the guns, I sell the chopper, and I sell you the guns separate. 2 separate shipments. Bam, legal loophole handled. It's the same thing when you're smuggling combatants into a war zone with a Red Cross ship. Therefore, if you know that the enemy is doing so, and why would you not believe the United States is shipping this shit? We've been doing it the whole goddamn war. So if you believe that that hospital ship is not really a hospital ship, is it an act of war? Or is it a war crime to bomb said hospital ship that is probably not a fucking hospital ship?
No, because if it's got the big red fucking cross on it, too bad, so sad. It's like the squirrel thing. You can do it in your own home. How are we supposed to know that you're doing it? You're not allowed to search his fucking place, right? So same thing with the hospital ship. You have to assume it's just a hospital ship, too bad, so sad. You can think all you want that it's carrying fucking nuclear bloody weapons to Saddam Hussein. Stiff fucking shit. Hospital ship. Out of bounds. too bad.
That's
MC. Yeah, MC, you got anything on this? Do you want to break the tie here?
No, the thing is they didn't need to do this because of exactly where this was coming from. Like they're pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious at this point that this ship here, in this case, was obviously a hospital ship. If there's a ton of freaking British ships going back and forth with hospital ships on them, that's one thing. But there was no real intelligence that the British were doing that. We're basically doing it. Now, the Germans in this case, if I'm not mistaken, did claim that it was night and they didn't know what ship it was. Right? They didn't see it was a hospital ship. We don't know for sure. There's no way of knowing for sure whether or not they knew it or not. Okay, I mean, because there's not going to be any evidence of that. All right, so
but prima facie evidence dictates they've said unrestricted warfare. Fucking, they've sunk a few before, like they gave a shit in the last few.
And that's true too.
Also, you got to remember when you're firing torpedoes out of a U-boat, only one guy can actually see what you're shooting at. The captain.
Well, no, and if you're using a periscope, right? You're below the waves. You're using a periscope. It's night. You're not going to see that red cross, bro. You're not.
You might. Okay, you might. It's impossible to know for sure. That's what it comes down to.
Trust me, Mad Dodge. You can see a lot at night that you think you can't.
Right.
Like if you've got a half decent moon, like half moon, you can see everything.
So this is becoming a contentious point. So, right, provisional government in Russia is recognized by Great Britain, France, the United States, Italy, Romania, and Switzerland. The German Raider is returns to Kiel after a second cruise. Go ahead.
Just real quick, Dennis, it's Dodge's question here. Chances are, it being a hospital ship, they'd have no reason to hide, therefore they'd be lit up, and it'd probably be in their advantage to have the Red Cross lit up too.
In this case, they probably wouldn't be lit up because you are in this area, and they don't want to. Just because you light up a hospital ship, you could then expose other ships. All right, from the background light, so they probably wouldn't have been running with lights on.
And Aunt Jack, that is exactly what I said right there. Exactly what I said.
Impersonating a hospital ship or a foreign ship or something like that in time of war is actually legal.
Well, and under normal circumstances, it would be, unless of course it's a bunch of Palestinians in an ambulance with a ton of weapons. But we'll
I knew you were going to say something like that.
Or a whole bunch of people in Syria wearing white helmets.
Exactly. Okay. Provisional government, and like I said, the provisional governments of Russia is recognized. So all the allied nations basically recognized Russia, and they stayed in the war. Right. So you see, the United States is going to actually enter the war with Russia still fighting.
Okay, but MC, you say Russia's still fighting. The reality of the situation is they're not. They're deserting in mass. The Navy is in uproar, which Russian Navy? I mean, that's kind of a running joke, right? But the fact is Russia is collapsing internally. And you're going to see that proceed.
It is. You're right. The British offensive in Palestine begins.
Hang on. Where are we?
We're on the 24th.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, never mind.
Qasr Sharim, Western Persia, is taken again by the Russian forces. The first battle of Gaza begins. Basically, the British push with, in Gaza. If you watch the movie Lawrence of Arabia, you'll notice that. And then on the 30th of March, you have the Russian provisional government issues a proclamation acknowledging the independence of Poland.
Hang on. 27th of March, the first battle of Gaza ends. And on the 6th of the 1st, 2020, the 900,700,045th fucking battle of bloody Gaza is still fucking going.
Okay, well, we'll worry about Gaza. All right, the Russian provisional government, like I said, lets Poland know that they'll create an independent Poland. The British hospital Gloucester Castle is torpedoed. Okay,
see, here's another one.
They're basically just any shit that they're seeing, they're torpedoing now at this point.
No, seems like the fucking Red Cross they're taking as a bullseye.
Well, it makes a good bullseye because it's right in the middle of the ship. It's like an aiming point. All right.
Yeah. He's not wrong.
The Emperor of Austria makes a secret proposal, all right, conveyed in a letter to Prince Sixta of Bourbon, to the French president, to open conversations in view of peace. They are noticing that the French the French army is having mutiny problems itself. And so they're saying, okay, let's see if we can end this war. Let's see if we can pull off an ally or two and end the war.
Oh, they're also noticing too, hang on, the Yanks getting involved. We might be fucked.
Well, the Yanks aren't going to quite get involved. That's the end of March. With just a few more days, and the Yanks are definitely involved.
Yeah. America. Fuck yeah.
Well, by now they would have noticed that fucking America has stopped talking to Germany and that, maybe some of the supplies might be sort of drying up and stuff like that, and they might be even getting a cold shoulder from America because they're still friends with Germany, and that unrestricted submarine warfare by the Germans has obviously pissed the Yanks off. So yeah, they might be thinking, well, obviously they're going to side with Britain and France, so if they do that, we're absolutely screwed.
Well, no, and speaking of pissing the Yanks off, I'm not even going to yell at you about calling me a Yank. I don't care. We're going to pivot to Iran because there is a big thing going on with Iran. No, real quick. Any last thoughts on World War I, guys? Because United States Air Force and the Royal Air Force are mobilizing and moving towards Iran as we speak.
Well, actually, both of those don't exist yet. Right now in the United States, you have
no.
United States Army.
I'm talking about real life. No, I'm talking about real life. 1/5/2020. The United States Air Force and the British Royal Air Force are moving towards assets in Iran right now.
Okay. Hey, Dodge, just real quick. You don't have to put British. You just go Royal Air Force and. Cause that's international. Like, not taking a piss out or anything like that, but like it's internationally known, right? You got RAF or Royal Air Force. That's Britain. The RAAF or Royal Australian Air Force. RNZAF, Royal New Zealand Air Force. USAF, United States Air Force. The still known as the Luftwaffe.
Real quick, I am looking at the map. There is one Royal RAF C-17 headed over. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There is 7 C-17s and 1 C-5M headed towards the Middle East right now as we speak.
Well, according to Jensen, there's a conga line of these things. They've been going nonstop for the last 72 to 96 hours, and it's continuing.
We're prepping for war, MC. Come on, you know this. Come on.
Well, still posturing at the moment. I mean, they just might be posturing.
It won't be posturing. What you're going to see, it won't be posturing for long if the Iranians continue. All right. This is in preparation for the Iranians. If they commit to a strike, it looks like there is intel that they're trying to open up a broad front against us. All right. As far as hit us in a number of different areas, a number of different embassies are under attack, possibly. There's a number of things that he said. Trump has said that we have 52 targets already selected. If the Iranians don't knock it off, we're going to go full bore against these 52 targets. Okay, so we're gonna, if we go in again, it's not gonna be, it'll be heavy strikes, but they'll still be pinpoint strikes. We're not going in on the ground.
So that was going to be my question. You do not believe we will invade through Iraq and actually cross the border?
Just left.
We don't have the military forces to invade through Iraq or Afghanistan.
He just left Iraq, didn't you?
No.
No, we're still there, and I really think we're going to be plus-upping over there.
We're stage in Saudi Arabia.
All we're waiting for, right, from what the Prime Minister of Iraq, the way he's been going, is he's basically saying he wants us out. If he wants us out, all he has to do is request us now. He has the backing of their parliament to say goodbye and kick us out, and we will leave.
Where are they staging? Saudi Arabia.
We won't stage in Saudi Arabia. We could stage in Kuwait, but that's not big enough. If we were going to do a true invasion, we would stage out of Afghanistan generally, and then possibly one of the other areas like the United Arab Emirates.
Where are all these C-17s going?
Where are the C-7A? The C-7As are bringing in supplies, all right, for the air campaign. That's what's coming. There's going to be an air campaign.
Fun fact: there's about 20 airplanes that I built actually in the UAE.
So.
I did check my DMs, Jensen. Thank you. President Trump is open to releasing the intelligence about the precision strike on the Iranian general. I don't know why he would say how we got that intel. I think that's dangerous, to say the least.
It depends on what kind of intelligence they're talking about. He's saying he's willing to release some of the intel, right? I mean, who knows what kind of intel he's talking about releasing. He could just be releasing, would you like to see the strike? It worked really well. Here's the photos of us taking this son of a bitch out.
Oh, kind of like what Obama did with Osama bin Laden, right? He released the videotape.
Yeah, some of that stuff. Yeah.
What do you think, though, MC? Seriously, first off, I don't believe you would be called back to active duty, right? You're getting, no offense, but you're getting a little bit older. I doubt they'd call you back, right?
I would. You would call back other people before you call back me. So if we're calling people back, if they start calling up the retirees again, all right, then I'd be worried. But until they start recalling up the retirees, I'm okay.
Just out of curiosity, would you get worried if a 61-year-old retired Army Apache pilot was called back that hasn't been in service and hasn't been active since 2004?
Yeah, that would annoy me.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same way. I've been out for 23 years now, and fucking like I'm just, I can't remember so much. It's not bloody funny. I'd have to go through basic again, fucking. But I'm now so fucking busted and broken and all this kind of shit from all the years that bloody I make Dad's army look like the SAS in fitness wise.
If I get called up again, prior to me getting called up, I'll know what's coming, because what'll happen is I'll get a little note, and the little note will say it's going to be, you have a meeting with the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and that they're going to be talking about updating your clearance. And if they update your clearance, then I could have an issue.
And probably about that time, I would get drafted into the Navy.
If they call me, that'd be the plot point where we're so fucking screwed. I'd already be off in the bush with my own gun, fucking doing my own thing.
Well, no, and the thing is, I've never served, and I just hit 35, so I can't even be drafted at this point. So I'm good to
go. You can be drafted.
Oh yeah, you can.
I mean,
can I? Because I scored really, really high on my ASVAB, which is probably a bad thing.
Exactly.
If they want to kick on a draft, or there's a number of ways that they can kick a draft off. Okay, is it likely that they're going to call you up? No. Okay, but if they get to the point where they're drafting people, the one thing that they'll do ahead of time, first of all, is they'll do a selected call up, right, where they will issue by name call-ups, okay, and only because of how I see this building, it isn't going to build up to total war overnight, okay. So if you're getting by name call-ups, what a by name call-up is you have been identified for whatever reason, using whatever means, by name as somebody that the military that has skills the military desperately needs. And they will call you up by name and say, congratulations, here's a letter from the President of the United States. All right. But in order to do that, they would need congressional approval, all right, to say, okay, the president has asked us to do this kind of call-up. Without congressional approval, there won't be that kind of a draft. Now, can Congress do something like that without anybody even realizing this was been passed? Yeah, it could happen just as easy as a bill in the defense budget goes through and nobody even realizes, oh, this by name call-up thing, what is this? Well, that's a by name if they want somebody specifically, so that, if they have specific skills like doctors and stuff, they can call them up. Okay.
Direct entry officer.
And those will definitely be what they'll be focusing on initially, is they'll be looking at doctors or some kind of skilled position such as that, and then other skill sets will be, conveniently added to the list that weren't necessarily being talked about when they first passed the bill. So, but it does look like we're doing a major plus up logistically. We are preparing for major airstrikes against Iran. All right. I suspect that the other thing that we will hit is we will try to totally destroy anything and everything along the Iranian coast with the Gulf.
Well, no, and Jensen, I just popped that up on the screen. 5 hours ago, they lobbed more rockets into the United States Embassy in Baghdad. So that's the green zone, right?
Yeah, they're lobbing. But and once again, what did they hit? Nothing. All right, they're hitting civilians. They're not even hitting Americans.
Okay.
Yeah. No. Okay. So first off, I'm sure John McCain is happy in his grave wherever he was buried. Because I think he's going to get his wish. Bomb, Iran.
Well, whether you like it or not, Iran has declared itself an enemy of the United States.
We are at war. And you said that the other day, and you were like, well, if you think we're not at war with Iran, well, just wait. And then immediately this kicked off. It was almost like prophecy, MC. Props, dude. Good job. But, like, that's in to deter them. I believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is dancing a jig right now as he preps the Iranian forces for invasion, or the Israeli forces for invasion. He's happy as a clam, dude. He gets his war.
What forces is he going to invade with?
Hey, the Israeli military is actually quite formidable.
The Israeli military might be formidable as far as a defense and in small territorial areas.
Bingo.
Do you think it's going to have any capability of actually invading Iran?
Just think
with
of
the
it this way.
Saudis. What about the Saudis? The Saudis are Sunni, right? Where Iran is Shiite.
Okay.
Or do I have that backwards?
Saudis going to invade Iran.
No, Iran's Shiite.
I had that backwards. I might have had it backwards. I don't know Islam.
No,
dude.
yeah, right the first time. Iran is Shia.
The Iranians are Shia. The southern part of Iraq is Shia. The northern part of Iraq is Sunni. And a good
Saudi Arabia has been itching for a conflict in the region, so they can take dominance for a while, dude.
All right, let's talk about some things. Let me pull up some stuff here. Just go on and talk. Like go ahead and talk about this. All right, Saudi Arabia. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, all I was going to say, though, is are you denying the fact that Saudi Arabia has been wanting dominance over the region for over 2 decades? Because I don't see how you could deny that.
When you say that they want dominance over the region, they have dominance over the region. They have dominance over the region that they want.
Okay, when you look at the Middle East, you have Saudi Arabia and Israel, and then you have Iran. And Iran is the big non-sequitur here. They are the ones that are pushing everybody else around. They are funneling the money into Hezbollah. They are fermenting the hatred towards Western civilization. And you can't tell me they're not.
No, they are. All right, but take a look at the population. This is the population of all of Saudi Arabia. This is Saudi Arabia. All right, Saudi Arabia is already engaged in a conflict in this area, or in this area right here. All right, it has right here is Qatar. Now Qatar are a bunch of Shia, and they're on that small little area there. And they've had their own little issues with Saudi Arabia. So if Saudi Arabia was going to do something, the first thing it would do is it would just eliminate Qatar from existence. All right. This is the population of Iran. All right. Do you notice the discrepancy? All right.
Well, that was my point. Is Iran is the big dog here. Well, they are Persia, man.
But the thing is that Saudi Arabia has the 2 biggest prizes in the Middle East. All right. They have Mecca and Medina. Everybody has to come. That is a Muslim has to come to Saudi Arabia. All right, from a wealth standpoint, Arabia
how often? Well, real quick, the pilgrimage you're referring to, they only have to do that once in their lifetime, right?
That is true, but it's still a point of pride. All right, of who's in charge of this. So Iran, however, you got to remember, Iranians are not Arabs. They don't speak Arabic.
No, they're Persian, and I've been referring to them as such for a reason. They are Persia, dude.
Right. So they themselves, while yes, they're fomenting a revolution. Yes, they are a definite problem child for the region. They are the region that is destabilizing. They're the country that's destabilizing the entire region right now. Okay. They've been fomenting terrorism around the region, especially in Gaza, especially in Lebanon, where this asshole who keeps saying that, when people keep saying that he wasn't a terrorist, while at the same time he's orchestrating kidnappings and tortures, all right, throughout Lebanon, Gaza. He orchestrated the attack of the U.S. Embassy in Benghazi. Yeah, this guy's not a terrorist though, apparently. He's just comparable.
Actually, though, I'm looking at your little thing here. Population growth rate in Iran is dropping from their current 81.16 million in 2017. It is lowering, where the United States is at 325.7 million in 2017 and growing.
Well, the United States is not what we're referring to. The big question, the other player in the world is this one. All right, this is who you've got to worry about, because this guy Erdogan wants to reestablish the Ottoman Empire under his rule. Turks, also, however, are not Arabs. Turks are Turks. So there's not going to be...
Aren't they more Greek? Isn't Turkey more of a Greek-leaning nation, right?
Believe it or not. Historically, they're more... They have more in common with the Russians than anything else.
Hey guys, I've got to go because I still have a lot of laundry to do to get ready for work tomorrow. So you guys have a good night and enjoy your conversation on world domination.
Okay. Now, are you getting back to what you mentioned about conscription dodge? Right now, going back to World War One, part of the reason why we didn't get shot for desertion or anything like that was because we'd argued with the British that no, you don't punish troops like that. You give them a reason to be there. You don't give them the threat of death, because fucking, well, they'll go ahead and try and fight if they can. There's a possibility they'll live on the other side. So this is where conscription worked in Australia for a great deal of time, right up until the 1960s. And the argument about the age of consent and all this kind of stuff and the vote and all this, the argument of how can we send 18-year-olds off to war when they can't have a say in it with the vote, so they lowered the age to 18 instead of putting the conscription age up. Go. Oh,
well, go on.
Well, when's he coming back? Because this is more for his benefit.
No, he just this happens to him now and then. Don't worry about it. He got bounced out. I'm sure he'll come back soon. See?
There we go.
Yeah, no, StreamYards is fucking annoying like that. No, okay, but here's the thing. You're right. Okay. I'm not really worried about conscription here. What we're talking about is the ebb and flow of geopolitics. And right now, we are flowing towards a war. And is it going to be World War III? Probably not.
No.
I mean, probably not. But is it going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz? Are oil prices going to spike? Are we going to enter into open conflict with Persia? Yeah, I think we are. I think President Trump has no choice but to press the trigger. And even I would have no choice. If I'm president of the United States and that enemy country is bombing my embassies, I squeeze the trigger. I don't think twice about it.
Yeah, well, you shut the fuck up, Dodge. Fucking sake. Well, this is how far it'll affect you, right? Fucking, so, like, in Vietnam, you cunts realise that conscripting people and threatening them with jail wasn't really a good thing, and then having a complete volunteer army was a good thing. Now, as a result of that, you'll probably find, MC will back me up, you'll have something similar to us, that when we leave the army, we have a thing called a ROSO, or a return of service obligation. It's sort of like in the next 5 years, if shit hits the fan, we'll call you up first. But after 5 years, we'll sort of assume that you've forgotten too much, and then we'll have to start training you again. So after 10 years, we'll have to treat you like you're a random citizen off the street that's never been with us.
I hate to be a prick, but I'm going to have to be a prick. Why do you keep bringing up conscription? I'm talking about the Iran situation and geopolitics, and you're yelling at me that... No, wait a minute. You're yelling at me to shut the fuck up, and you keep going back to a conversation we had 45 minutes ago.
Because you asked a fucking question. I've been trying to answer it for 45 minutes, and you won't shut the fuck up, so I fucking can.
It was answered. You answered it 45 minutes ago.
No, I bloody didn't.
We moved on.
No, I fucking didn't. I didn't get a chance to answer it. For fucking sake.
Okay, enough of that. The reality is the Iranians have been splitting for a fight, and they've been talking a lot of shit they frickin' flown the red flag above the mosques, saying that they have a great battle coming on because they want to bring the battle on. And the reason they want to bring the battle on, all right, is because they themselves now are desperate. Okay, their population isn't happy with them right now. What's the best way to get the population to try and do this? Well, we'll attack the great enemy. We'll attack the great Satan. All right, that way we can sit up and get the population behind us. At this point in time, I've tried to explain this to people. I mean, you can wish in one hand about what Iran all you want. You can sit up there and start making comments about, you Americans, you don't need to be in the region. Okay, fine. But we are in the region, all right? And the reason we're in the region is not necessarily for the best interest of the United States per se. If the Iraqis don't want us there anymore because they've given the government over to Iran, so be it. Then we'll leave, all right? But the Iranians are not going to just let that happen, and let me tell you why. Because they can't. The Iranians right now we're going to get what they want. When the Iraqis said get out, all right, and the Iraqis tell us to leave, we will leave. But see, they can't. That doesn't solve their problem. Their problem is their population. Their population is angry with what's going on with them right now. So they need to get the population whipped up. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to whip this up. The Iranians, there were a lot of Iranians, especially around the world, that were celebrating when we took out that Qud commander. And we're going to sit up there and probably decapitate Qud, and we're probably going to decapitate the Revolutionary Guard. If you want to talk about what's going to happen as a result of this, just wait and see. All right, but the Iranian regime is tottering right now. It wasn't America that created the gas price hike that led to mass protests and them shooting civilians, okay, throughout the country. It wasn't the Americans that cut off the internet so the rest of the world couldn't witness the wholesale slaughter as they opened fire on unarmed protesters, all right, that were just, granted, in some cases they were rioting, all right, as they burned banks, as they went around saying, we're tired of this shit. Okay, this government is going to stop.
Let's think about this, MC. You found your country on revolution, and then you get mad when they start a revolution. That's like Americans getting mad about Americans owning guns. You know what I mean? It's fucking stupid. And I digress, but I'll continue here. Here's the fact. Okay, yes, we're going to decapitate their heads of their military organizations. Granted, why are we not targeting the Ayatollah? Didn't he start this shit show? Fuck that motherfucker, right?
He might be on the list. I would.
Right? Like, fuck that motherfucker. If we're going to do anything, kill that cunt.
The only reason why you're leery about doing that is that he's a religious leader.
Yeah, you want to cause 1 billion martyrs overnight?
Well,
sorry, I spoke. Whoops.
I'm willing for them to, if they want to martyr themselves, I'm willing to acquiesce to their request.
The thing of it is, what do you think this fucking mass migration has been for the last 10 fucking years? The cunts are willing to go Allahu Akbar here, not there.
Well, the problem is that there aren't enough Iranians to cause that in the United States for that would really do a whole lot of damage. Not in the United States. It's kind of
well, MC, the Iranians. Wouldn't you say, MC? Wouldn't you say the Iranians within the United States are the outcasts of Iran? Therefore, they would applaud us decapitating the Ayatollah.
See, that's the problem with people from that area. You can't really trust what they got to say most of the time.
In the case of the Iranians, though, the way the Iranians, believe it or not, the Iranians have the Iranian population in the United States is not as insular, all right, as, for example, the Pakistanis and the other Muslim groups, right? The other Sunni Muslims, the Shia Muslims in the United States are few and far between. They've separated throughout the country, all right, but they're not tightly coalesced anywhere, all right. They don't have little regional power blocks like the Sunnis do, all right. And they most of them, quite frankly, are secular, All right, the ones that are coming there, most of the Iranians in the United States are not followers of Islam. So I'm not concerned about the Iranian tax inside of the United States. However, the Iranians in other areas are a major problem. They are the problem in the Middle East right now because they've been funding terrorism around the freaking world. All right, and they've been doing it for a long time. As much as people talk about the destabilization that went on in Syria due to our intervention, it was being destabilized in Syria long before we got there because of Iran. And they've been destabilizing Lebanon. Right now, Lebanon doesn't know what it wants to do because all sides are at each other's throats. It's literally a free-for-all there going on in Lebanon right now. The government is supposedly an Islamic government, but at the same time, it's fighting internally with other Islamic sects thanks to the intervention of the Iranians.
Is how fucked up it is in Lebanon at the moment. Hezbollah are the good guys.
Well, okay, and yeah, sorry about cutting you off, Farty. I muted because I didn't mean to talk over you. But, Lebanon, don't they have open slave markets again in Lebanon? Isn't that how bad it's getting, right?
That's Libya. But they helped destabilize Libya. The people that attacked us in Libya, that attacked Benghazi, were the Hezbollah in Libya.
I mean, how bad is it when you have open slave markets in 2020? I mean, seriously, you can go there and buy a human being right now. That is insane, right?
It's horrific. There's no doubt about that. But that's what you're dealing with this group of people. Look at what they've been doing, right? This group, all right, this Cubs force that people are talking about, the Pakistanis were pissed off because recently a group of them attacked in Pakistan and decapitated some of their military leaders. So the idea that they're getting all bent out of shape, how dare we do something like this? Apparently they have no problem doing it around the region, but it's only going to piss people off in that region if America does it.
Oh, no, not necessarily. It was fucking funny because a few years ago when ISIS was on the rise, and it was ISIS and ISIL, they were trying to side with all the fringe groups in Syria. And they were running, this is when they were starting to run around beheading every second person, right? And they reckon they released a video on Live Leak saying, oh, this is a Syrian general and all this kind of stuff, paying for his crimes, and then they beheaded him on camera and all this, and then a day or so later, fucking, I think it was either Jabhat al-Islamiyah or fucking wasn't the Free Syrian Army, it was another one of those. It was Jabhat al-Islamiyah who went, hey, that's one of our guys, you fucking cunts, and then they declared war on ISIS, and then shortly after, Al-Qaeda came out and said, no, we're distancing ourselves from ISIS and ISIL because fucking they're too bad for our image.
Okay, so we discussed the air groups heading to the region to supply the bombing campaign. Are we moving naval assets towards the Strait of Hormuz? I know we've had a battle group stationed off of there for a year and a half. Are we upping that, MC? Do you know?
We've been plucking stuff out of. We sent certain fleets. All right. The problem is the fleet that we want to send. All right. That's closest is the fleet that we're also dealing with the Chinese with. Okay, so there's a little bit of a slowness in there, but at the same time, we did reactivate I think the 10th Battle Fleet, and to be honest, who knows what those orders are.
We reactivated a whole fleet.
Well, the 10th Fleet was basically stood down because the carrier was in maintenance.
Yeah, but that sounds worrisome, to say the least. If we're activating, even if it's coming out of dry dock and it was under repairs and maintenance. I
Carriers,
understand.
they sent it without the carrier.
Really? They sent it without the carrier?
Yep.
So you got the battleships and the corvettes and some subs, right?
Yep.
No battleships.
Well,
fuck, he got destroyers and cruisers. No battleships. No battleships.
You got the destroyers, the cruisers, and the
subs. Yeah. That's all you really got nowadays is subs, destroyers, cruisers, and aircraft carriers. You got various different types of aircraft carriers, like your leading dock fucking helicopters and things like that. But fucking yeah, you don't even have frigates anymore. You got rid of those a few years back.
Well, no, and isn't the Corvette pretty much a light cruiser? Right, it's just a more mobile cruiser.
No. It was a certain tonnage of ship with a certain amount of weaponry that you don't really have anymore. The closest you probably got to a Corvette nowadays is a small Coast Guard cutter with something bigger than a 40mm Bofors gun on the front deck or something like that. You'd usually class them as like patrol, like something larger than an offshore patrol boat. So like yeah, well, technically because the Coast Guard's part of the Navy or part of the military and all this kind of stuff, and they do operate something that at a stretch you would possibly class as a Corvette, although it'd be called something different, like a cutter.
They generally call them cutters, the Coast Guard cutters, and
yeah.
In the United States, the Coast Guard is technically no longer a part of the Navy.
Oh well, it's still part of the Defense Force, though, isn't it?
They fall under Homeland Security. They do not even fall under the Department of Defense anymore.
Oh right. Oh well,
yeah. They mainly operate off the coast and do rescue missions and shit.
Yeah.
But no, okay. Couldn't we pick up a Japanese carrier on our way through?
With the
right? They're our allies.
They do not have one of their carriers ready to go yet. They have some of their LSATs. They're not their LSATs. They have a few helicopter carriers available. But why would the Japanese get involved in this?
Because we tell them to. They're our allies. We tell them to. That's it.
Well,
right?
See, while they've been ramping up to have an offensive force for a fair few years now, they're not actually allowed. That actually hasn't become official yet.
For them to, they have moved certain ships. Believe it or not, that they have sent a few ships there, but they're not. What the Japanese are trying to do is the Japanese are trying to walk a middle of the road. All right, mainly because the Japanese of all of our allies, the Japanese are the ones who actually have more of a relationship with the Iranians than any other ally. Unless you consider Iraq one of our allies, which I never have. So.
Well, that's really weird too, because Saddam Hussein, his big adversary was Iran. We really had no reason to destabilize Iraq. He was keeping Iran in check.
His big adversary was Iran because of what the Iranians tried to destabilize them. That is true. All right. But at the same time, he also thought, with the help of the Russians, that he could kick the Iranians out. All right. Now the Russians, of course, weren't in a position, decided not to help anybody, just sat on the sidelines. The Iranians, all right, began kicking the holy crap out of the Iraqis as a result. And if it wasn't for the United States offering to give Iraq intelligence, and we basically used intelligence on both sides, they would have mopped the floor with the Iraqis. The Iraqis also used chemical weapons against the Iranians.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, they couldn't have, because remember, all the tweeters say that they never had any.
Well, they got rid of them after Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Don't you know that, Farty? They listened to the UN regulations and everything, and they were obeying all the UN restrictions, and we just went in there and harmed these people for no reason whatsoever. There was no reason.
And all the Kurds and the Shiites are all crisis actors. They're all still alive.
Yeah.
Even the old ladies to this day.
They bombed the Kurds several times, actually, with chemical weapons.
I know.
What happens politically if by some miracle the Democrats get their way and President Trump is impeached in the middle of this crisis with Iran? Wouldn't that that's a nightmare scenario, right?
Well, sure, but what are you going to impeach him on? You're going to have to look. Did Trump do something that's worth impeachment? The question still remains. If what they've shown so far, the answer is no. If there's something else that he may have done that they could bring up, if they have it to bring up, they're gonna bring it up. Now the Senate, all right, has basically said recently that they're going to end this nonsense with impeachment overnight. All right, Mitch McConnell's basically saying he's at the point now where he's going to sit up there and tell them, look, we're going to sit up there and call the impeachment. We're going to say, show us your evidence. If you don't show up, then we're going to end it right then and there.
Just
right?
real quick.
Showing up. So you will probably see movement one way or another along that. Now, granted, this changes what's going on right now is going to change things. How it's going to affect, what the effect is going to be, honestly, nobody knows, because whether we like it or not, the ball is completely in Iran's court.
Just real quick. Just under 4.5 minutes for a 2-hour show.
Well, I'm good to go with this Iran situation. Everybody's been wanting me to talk about it, and here we are. And you're right. The ball is in Iran's hands, and they want a war. And they want a war because of the reasons you stated. They want a war because their citizens are unhappy. They're sick of being repressed. They're sick of being cracked down on. In the 1960s, women didn't have to have a hijab. It's 2020, and women can't even drive. That's how far backwards they are. It's ridiculous, and their people know it. You know why they know it? Because of proxy servers.
Well, not just that.
They have the internet, man.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, like, even before the internet and all this kind of stuff, like, they tried doing the North Korea thing with the whole Islam that, the West is bad, McDonald's is bad, it's all harem, fucking all this kind of stuff. But they let their kids go off overseas and learn in different countries and stuff like that. And quite a few of them are educated in places like Oxford, Harvard, and fucking, bloody few in America, real prestigious universities. And while they were there, they were exposed to Western culture. They realised that there's nothing wrong with all of it. That they actually like their KFC and their Maccas and fucking MTV and custom kitchens and all this kind of fucking bullshit, and they've gone back sort of not seeing the bullshit that the Ayatollah and Islam and all this kind of stuff, and it has been the case over a few decades now that these old hardliners are sort of breeding themselves out of existence, because a lot of these younger people who have bred like crazy and gone overseas, and their kids are now going overseas and seeing the same thing, are outnumbering a lot of all of these old hardliners. And the current Ayatollah realises that basically Islam in Iran is going to only last as long as he does, and pretty or much the fucking hardliners are going to lose all power and all this. If there isn't a revolution in Iran to overthrow them before this war happens, I think you might find that it will happen as a result of the war, because back a few years ago, I was speaking to a lot of Iranians on Live Leak when a lot of this stuff about their nuclear program was kicking up a big stink. A lot of the Iranians I was talking to were screaming blind that they absolutely did not want a war with America, because, well, they've seen what the Yanks do everywhere else. They sure as shit didn't want it to happen there. Because funnily enough, although it's like a hard-line fucking Islamic country, there's still lots and lots and lots of freedoms there, and there's still lots of, it's not a fucking shithole like Palestine where it's like mud huts and shit with bullet holes and crap all over it. There's lots of nice roads and infrastructure, and their hospitals are pretty decent, and their cars are modern, and fucking people have jobs and shit like that. And then, yeah, sure, they got the secret police and it's a police state and all this kind of stuff, but relatively speaking, it's nowhere near as bad as what people like to make it out to be.
This map here is important. This map here shows you the demographic breakup of what's going on in Iraq. You will notice right here how this is almost all Sunni or Shia. This is the Iranian supporting group. This is also the heaviest population group. Okay, the next largest population are the Sunni Arabs, which are right here and here, and then of course you end up with the Kurds. Okay. Yes, Farty?
Sorry, farted.
All right. So it shows you the reason I'm showing this map is it shows you where a lot of the stuff. Now, if we're talking about the oil fields, guess what? This whole area down here is where the oil fields are. Right? You'll notice there's a population right here of a bunch of Shia, all right, but that's because they were forced down there, all right, to try and take away the oil from the Sunni that took the oil field areas from the Shia areas. All right, that was intentionally done by Saddam Hussein. All right, so there are a lot of regional animosities and shit down here, but this gives you a good breakdown of what you're dealing with as far as ethnic and religious groups.
Well, no, and what Farty was talking about with Iran being a modern state. Yeah, you don't want the United States coming in there and bombing you into the Stone Age if you are a semi-modern country. You know what I mean? Like, is that what you really want? Because the United States, we will roll in, we'll kick the door open, and we will bomb you into oblivion and sit around and eat popcorn and watch you burn. We don't give a fuck.
Nobody believes that. We didn't do it in Iraq. We could have. We could have bombed Iraq into oblivion. Why didn't we? We didn't take over Iraq like we could have. Why didn't we? So nobody in this region thinks that the United States will really get serious. This is the result of going into these areas, right, half-heartedly. Yes, okay, something has to happen here. We've got to do something to deal with these situations. Okay, fine. Well, then you do a tit-for-tat kind of response. They don't think we're serious. They truly don't.
I don't think it did you any favours when Obama came out and said that you couldn't afford to fight proper wars anymore and that you'd only be doing protracted conflicts from now on.
Well, no, but here's the thing, though. That's fine. You guys are right. You're completely correct. I believe we shouldn't go to war, but if we do, we wipe them out and we take their shit. That's my philosophy. And I believe that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, will go in there, kick the door open, light them on fire, and eat some popcorn. This is their intervention, okay? This is, you guys, you've been fucking around for 35, 40 years, or 400, depending on how you want to look at it. And we're done. We've had it. Fuck you. We're done.
Well, that's why what you'll probably see us do is this area here is heavily controlled by the Revolutionary Guard and the Quds Force.
I think they could dictate the battlefield and all this kind of shit.
We're gonna wipe this. We're gonna wipe this area out. That's probably high on our list of priorities. There's a number of freaking silkworm missiles in this entire area. We're probably going to hit that. We're most likely going to hit certain areas in Shiraz, and I guarantee you we're going to hit areas in Tehran. Now, whether or not we hit any of these, I don't think that we're really ready to do that. And I think we'll leave Tabrit alone. Okay, but what we're going to do is along this entire coastline, we're going to wipe it out. Now, remember what I was telling you about Qatar? Here's Qatar right here. Qatar. This is the Shia area right here. This is controlled by Shia, and it's right next to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia wants to attack Iran. They have to get there somehow. Well, how are they going to do that? They're going to have to go through the Gulf. They don't have any landing ships. In fact, as you can tell, they really don't have a whole lot of freaking ships anywhere along here or any kind of coastline here, with the exception of Daman, all right, that for any kind of real shipping through the area. In fact, what they were using to ship their oil out, to be honest, for the longest time, is they had to deal with Qatar. They had to deal with Qatar, and they had to deal with
Well, that's what I was going to bring up, is the UAE. Couldn't Saudi Arabia use the UAE to jump across the Gulf? They don't necessarily have to invade Qatar, right?
Why wouldn't they? Why not freaking fix that problem that they've been having? If you're going to go to war, why not fix the freaking, thorn in the side that's been there the entire time?
And is it Qatar or is it Qatar? It keeps going back and forth.
I
thought it was Qatar, yeah.
You can call it Qatar, you can call it Qatar, you can call it whatever you want. It's all the same. We're talking the same place.
Oh, it's actually Qatar without the R.
Oh, Qatar?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But, no, because you don't, I mean, I get it, yeah, why not? Saudi Arabia, can take that peninsula, it's a great jump-off point. I'm guessing the gross domestic, is pretty high there, too, with oil fields and shit. So, I get your point. But, then again, peacefully, the UAE is going to stay out of this shit. They make their money off of oil, they don't want nothing to do with any of this. They're pretty much secular, dude. They really don't give a fuck. So you could probably jump off of the UAE, dude.
The population is not as secular as are the leaders less loony than many of the leaders in the area? Yeah, but I wouldn't call them secular. I wouldn't say that they're not secular. I really wouldn't. All right, I wouldn't call them secular. There's some protests, several protests about Westerners in Dubai and so forth. So don't discount the religious intent there. Right, it definitely exists.
Okay, fair enough. You would know better than I. I've never even seen that region, really, dude. And you were in the military. I don't know if you were deployed over there, but I'm guessing you have a better idea than I do.
I will admit that I've been in this little area before. I actually set foot on Qatar and Saudi Arabia.
Okay, yeah. See, I've never been out of the United States, so I will totally leave that up to you.
I was never based when I was based in the sandbox. I was never based in those areas, but I did set foot in those areas several times. So, anyway, that's neither here nor there.
But the thing is, okay, and I see Jez in the chat. Dude, the link is in my Discord if you want to jump on. We have switched from World War I to World War III because, Iran is fucking around, and the United States and Great Britain are moving assets into the area as we speak. And what's up with the Great Britain angle there, actually? We haven't touched on that.
I think that what basically they're prepping for is they're prepping for where they're expecting the attacks to happen. Is they're expecting mainly, all right. One of the things that the Iranians said that they could do is they were going to attack you at the U.S. warships, all right, which means that the British warships in the regions are also subject to attack. Okay, so that's where they're expecting the flashpoints to actually start to take place.
Do you believe that maybe Boris is hedging his bets? He's going to do a hard Brexit. He wants to make a deal with the United States. Hey, I back the U.S. right now without hesitation, and they're going to back me, right?
I wish I knew the answer to that totally. All right, but I don't. All right. Exactly what the British government is actually thinking in this case. It would be nice if they had determined they were going to back the United States, but I don't think that that's necessarily the best idea from the government's perspective, unless, like I said, they're worried about the shipping. Unless the intel that where the attack is, their expected attack is from the ships. And before anybody says that's laughable, okay, they can do it. They can damage and even sink several of our warships in the region. They have that capability. Now,
well, I believe we touched upon that. Iran or Iran, however you want to pronounce it, they are a modern state. They do spend a lot of money in their national defense, and they can put up a fight. This is not Saddam Hussein we're dealing with. This would be a different war, people. This is a different animal entirely.
Well, I mean, we could have. There's several things we could have done differently during the Iraq War, which is one of the things that's one of the reasons why we're suffering through the situation right now is because we didn't go in the way we needed to. We didn't do what we needed to. I know a lot of people keep saying that, oh, no. What we did in Iraq, we just screwed it all up. Yeah, we screwed it all up because we freaking listened to the State Department. It's time we stopped listening to the State Department freaking experts and started realizing they're the biggest problem in the world. All right. And gone back to the regular standard real politics of yesteryear. All right. And understand that that's what everyone else, that's the game board everyone else plays with. That's the game board we need to play with.
What's the distance between Kabul and Tehran? What is that? 500, 600 kilometers?
Between where?
Kabul and Tehran, because we still have a base in Kabul, right? In Afghanistan, yeah.
We got bases all over in Afghanistan.
Yeah, so we can make a strike from Afghanistan into Tehran in what? 22 minutes?
Let me let's do this. What's the
so 26 driving hours. So yeah, we're looking at 22 to 45 minutes.
I want to see how many miles. 2,000 miles.
Yeah, you're talking about supersonic speeds with what, F-22s, right?
We're not F-22.
Oh, you're right. We're not looking for a dogfight. We're sending bombers. So what, B-52s?
Yeah, we're going to bring from the bases we have in here, and possibly Qatar, and possibly Kuwait. We do also have a ton here in Riyadh. But we're not bringing.
What assets, without breaking any classification, what do you believe we could send from Afghanistan? That would be the quickest route. We already have bases there. We have airfields.
We could bring in an F-15 that we have in the area. All right, that we would have to resupply them, which is fairly easy to do. We have plenty of resupply areas. So from here, our options from a bombing perspective, all right, are somewhat limited to fighter type aircraft or small aircraft. We have activated a B-52 base, if I'm not mistaken, inside of the UAE. We have B-52s in here. Okay, so we'll bring in B-52s from here. And once again, you'll see B-2 bombers come in from the United States. We will fly in B-2 bombers.
If you really wanted to, you could fly fucking F-15s all the way from bloody England if you want. You could fly them all the way from America if you really wanted to.
We can, but to be honest, we
refueling.
found that does a number on our pilots, so we'd prefer not to have to do that. If we're going to fly them anywhere,
and air-to-air refueling is actually pretty fucking difficult, dude. I mean, I get it; it can be done, but it's kind of a bitch.
No, not for Americans. It's almost second nature. I mean, they do it basically almost every time they fly. What you were thinking was that yes, there was a time when it was ridiculously difficult, but that was during the Falklands War with the Black Buck 1 operation, which is still the longest bombing operation in history. And that was mainly due to the fact that they were winding down the V-Force because Britain had gone to the Polaris missile system and things like that. And anything that needed bombing, the Americans were going to do for them. So they didn't really bother with long-range bombing and all this. And most of all of their refueling equipment was deactivated. And they literally had to relearn aerial refueling for that one particular operation.
If we would hit this area here, we hit their airfields. All right.
You zoomed in, MC, on the international airport in Iran. What happens if we target the international airport of Iran? I'd be like hitting PDX, right? Dude, you bomb Portland fucking International Airport. How many civilians is that going to kill? 100,000?
Quite a few, because you can transfer through there from a lot of countries, and a lot of countries that don't particularly side through with the West do go through there. So yes, you'd be killing quite a few civilians from very many countries.
There's not civilians. They're the enemy.
What if there's a Limey though that is going to Egypt? And they have to have a rest over at that airport. You guys killed a British citizen. You guys killed a Limey.
I guess the Limey shouldn't have been there.
Are you saying that we shouldn't be flying to Cairo and going to see the pyramids? Because I didn't think we were at war with Egypt.
Because you can go through other places. I mean, at this point in time, if you start going to Iran, well, it's your stiff shit, because as we're talking, it's starting to look like a war zone. It's as the black people in a token fucking scary movie kind of thing, sort of like, it's time for me to get my black ass out of here.
That's a fair point. I'll stand corrected on that. You're right. Everybody knows the news, right? If your ticket says I'm gonna land in Tehran, maybe you exchange your ticket, yo.
But typically, if you're going through the Middle East or going to the Middle East, you'd most likely go to Dubai.
We also have a major base here. In Turkey.
Okay, let's get on to that. Okay, yeah, we have bases in Turkey. They're a NATO ally, but we both know they're not. No, we all three know they're not. What side of the coin are they gonna flip on this one, bro?
Probably Iran's, whilst we're not looking.
They don't like the Iranians. Okay.
Well, that's what they fucking say.
Whether or not they'll help us or not, that's 50-50. But they're not, unlike Iraq. All right, you got to remember the Turks are Sunnis. They've never liked the Iranians ever. Okay, they have a history there as well.
Yeah, it's not like we can fucking trust them nowadays. But
no, you're right. I don't disagree with you there either. We can't.
And Jack in the chat says EU is the real problem. Yeah. France, Germany, Belgium, they're not going to support this action against Iran at all.
Well, no, because they're a bunch of freaking. They're the ones who caused a lot of the problems.
And now it is a problem. Of course, France is going to be a cheese-eating surrender monkey like they already are. They're already prepped for
It's
invasion.
not even that, though. It's not even that. Remember what I brought up with Boris, Farty? They're gonna see it the same way I just did, right? The UK has positioned itself to side with the United States. Why? Because that's beneficial with their hard Brexit. So that automatically makes the EU against this whole idea.
Not necessarily, because it could splinter off different groups and stuff like that. This might be a very good way for Trump once Britain does leave. Poland's already said they're going to leave. Some of the Scandinavian countries have said they're going to leave. And basically, Trump, knowing Trump, he'd probably be straight in there going, rightio, let's talk deals and shit. You still want America's protection and all this kind of stuff? Jump on board with us.
Well, it's going to come down to you will probably see Trump push NATO, which I don't blame him on. We need to push NATO. We need to push NATO into look. You either start coughing up and start acting like you guys do this, because if you don't want us there, we'll leave there too. What people don't realize, all these people who made all these freaking comments in my chat, right? And I respect your comments, I really do. Right, but all the people want to sit there and bash America and say, "Do you just got to understand, America's not wanted anywhere." Okay, you're going to get what you want. You're going to get that attitude from Americans in a way you don't expect. Listen to Mad Dodge; he'll tell you, Americans. He wants to go back to isolationist Fortress America, where the United States just says, "Screw you guys. You guys deal with your own shit." And the United States will do something like that. Now, I have other issues, all right, that I like to complain about. All right, when people talk about the U.S. military being so large and how powerful the United States military is, I like to point things out about if you think our military is large, then maybe you should sit up there and be taking a look at our budget for Social Security. But regardless, okay, all right, we need to if you want the U.S. to pull out, the United States is more than willing to go back to Fortress America. We do have a very strong, even to this day, isolationist tendency in the United States. If you keep pulling on that string long enough, eventually Americans will go, okay, we'll pick up our ball and go home. You don't want us here, we'll leave. The problem is going to be with the compression of technology in the world today, it isn't going to be 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years before you start having problems in these regions. It's going to be immediately. And it's going to be 3 or 4 years, and the rest of the world will be like, why isn't the United States leading? Why isn't the United States taking the lead? Why aren't you doing this? And you're going to hear from the United States, people in the United States go, you just told us to get the hell out. Go solve it yourself. And we will sit back and watch and just eat popcorn. Enjoy.
Yeah, no, and MC's right, especially bringing me up, because that's exactly what I want to do. Fuck all y'all. I'm done. Fuck you.
It'd be fucking hilarious, right? The minute you can't say that, Indonesia goes, right, we're invading Australia, and it's like, oh no, the first country that gets invaded is the one we actually do have an obligation to, because they've already been there for us like 4
Would you
times.
really think Indonesia would try to invade Australia?
Yeah, we've had a defense policy on them for like 40 fucking years.
Yeah, I don't know. You have a defense policy with us, and we would honor it. The question is I don't think Indonesia would necessarily attack you guys.
Hey, who the fuck do you think the fucking Camarians used to be in the kangaroo exercises?
I think you'd be more worried about New Guinea, right? They're gonna show up and start fucking cannibalizing you. So how about you hold off for New Guinea's invasion, and then you call us up.
That's actually
America to get back involved in this. To be honest, is this
the cannibals are actually the Indonesian side, which is called Irian Jaya.
okay? This is the area where we're going to have an issue. Because you've only got a 50-mile little spread through here. All right. And we send ships back and forth through the strait all the time. Of course, so do the Chinese. All right. So that this is becoming an issue. And of course, these islands around here that they're creating, all right, are also creating other issues because China is trying to take over these areas. So it's becoming a flashpoint. Obviously, Shenzhen and Hong Kong and Macau, which were all part of the special, the special occupation zones. These are all becoming issues as well. Okay. And we'll have to see what China does with it. But the biggest thing that could bring us into this is right here, is Taiwan, Formosa. The other thing, of course, that could happen is if something happens in this area. But I don't expect that to be the case. I think one thing that should be quite interesting to people here is notice this. See all the logistics capability that is in China with all the roads and everything. Notice what the Russians have.
Cool.
You see the lack of development in comparison. This is why Russia is not. When they were the Soviet Union, they're not the threat that everyone thinks that they are. They're really not.
Well, when you look at Russia, the western end, right? The western territories, the European territories, or densely populated, where the eastern and Siberia is wide open and empty, right?
Look at the logistics capability of Minsk. It's on par with Poland, and then you compare it to Germany. Do you see? Yeah, it's more densely populated for Russia. Obviously, Moscow is a heavily populated area. There's a lot of logistics in and out of Moscow. But then as soon as you start going east and any way around it, it just isn't. It's just wide open area. It's just wide open space for the most part. And if we go to satellite, you can see that it's just not. There's just not a lot here. It's all farming.
I think you'll find that a lot of lack of logistics, and especially in the communist era, revolved around the way they got around the Blitzkrieg, which was, taking the time to set up line upon line upon line of defence and all this kind of stuff, and having heavy prior defences that eventually the enemy will headbutt towards, which will only be getting exponentially greater as the lines collapse. Now, we've got a similar policy in Australia. If the North ever got attacked, there's fuck all in the way of logistics, but it's an extremely huge front that you've got to cover, and an extremely huge line of logistics that you've got to support. And all this kind of stuff.
What do you notice? Take a look at all this farming. What do you notice?
And hang on, and the lack of logistics on your end can also work in your favour, because that means the slower the enemy advance and all this kind of stuff, the more terrain they've got to take, the longer the logistics supply, the longer you've got to prepare your defence.
That's true. That's true. But take a look at this forested area. Look at all this farmland. Okay. Now why am I pointing this out? Well, I'm pointing this out because I want to show you the difference between this area in the Ukraine, right? And let's go back on over to the United States and show you an area in the United States that is just in the same kind of thing. Notice. Do you notice how developed these areas are? Do you see how everything is laid out in a grid? Where the grid falls apart, of course, is right along the rivers, but then it goes right back to a grid.
Well, yeah, and you can look at even where I live, the Cascade Mountains, right? It's more densely populated than areas of Russia, where you have 300 kilometers squared, and it's just empty. There's just nothing there besides the Yeti, right? I mean, what the fuck? Yeah, no, go ahead, zoom in on fucking either the Willamette Valley or the Cascades bordering Bend and Springfield. And you'll see what I'm talking about, dude.
Yeah, there's 300 square miles of Yeti in a McDonald's restaurant.
I'm just trying to find Bend.
Bend's over in eastern Oregon, towards Idaho. It's right over the over the Cascades.
This is Bend right here, right?
Yep.
Is it me? Just at the top of the screen there. Stop zooming out. Stop zooming out. Zoom in just a little bit. Right, stop there. Right, yeah, right at the top middle of the screen there. It looks like someone shaved a giant cock and balls in the fucking tree line. Zoom out one little notch.
I'm not so sure I see what you're trying to point out.
Zoom out one more notch. There. See, right in the middle of the top of the screen. Looks like
no,
Dick and Balls profile. Dick and Balls profile.
Talk about here?
No.
Yeah.
No, actually, MC.
MC.
No, zoom out again, actually. Dude. Yeah. Down towards the right, bottom of the screen, right above stop sharing and hide. That looks like a fucking impact crater.
Where?
Oh, your cursor is right above it to the right, down and left.
Right here? Right here?
No, over to the left.
Here.
Yep, right there. Doesn't that look like an impact crater?
It's round.
Right?
It's an interesting feature. I'm not sure.
Holy shit. Yeah, no, did we just find out what killed the dinosaurs? Look at that shit. That looks like a goddamn impact crater.
Actually, if you zoom in on it again, just go up a little bit. Right. If you let your mind wander, it kind of looks like someone done a sketch of like an asteroid in space, like breaking the sound barriers, like that little nodule thing inside the dark parts, the asteroid itself, and the dark parts, the shockwave coming off it.
It is interesting that it's kind of round in that regard. I don't know if that's just what kind of feature that is.
Could be volcanic.
Well, because he's right. This is a valley here. All right, so this could be a very ancient impact crater. Or
yeah, it could be.
Or it could be a very ancient, large volcanic area as well.
I mean, like, aren't you close to Mount St. Helens and Yellowstone and that shit?
Well,
Mount St. Helens is in the Cascade Range, but that is up in Washington, right outside of Vancouver. It's about, 150 miles away from me? Something like that?
It's up in here.
Well, yeah. It's same range.
Here's Mount St. Helens. Here's Mount Hood, which is also, I believe, a crater. I don't think it's active, though.
So you'll probably
Mount Hood is not active. Mount Hood is not active, but if you find the Three Sisters, I am on the valley side of the Sisters Pass, and the Sisters are active.
Yeah, you'll probably find this is what they're finding out with Hawaii and the Hawaiian chain of islands and stuff like that. Like volcanoes actually move. So you probably find that one there's long extinct. Then you had Mount Hood, and then it's moved up to Mount St. Helens, and in about 10,000 years it'll probably pop up again about 100 k's north or something.
These are the Sisters, right? The north, south, and Broken Top?
Yeah. I believe the middle sister is still active.
So these are volcanic areas. Of course, if this goes off, you're toast.
These would all be in chains as well.
Yeah. Well, this is the volcano.
That's the Cascadia plate smashing into what's the other plate? I don't remember. I know it's the Cascadia fault line now.
Mount Rainier, I think, is another one. I don't know if it's active or not, though.
Oh, well, there you go. If it's on a plate, I'd say that first thing you identify definitely is a fucking.
Well, this whole area is a plate, and that's it comes all the way down through here. This is part of the fault system that comes all along this area. Now, what's interesting from what Mad Dodgers was talking about here is this valley right here, because you can see once again. Notice how we do things. Notice how everything is gridded out. All right. And there's a reason for that. It's called efficiency of movement. if you go back to these other areas, these old world areas, which I include Russia, you'll notice that they don't have the kind of efficiency even in the farming areas.
Because they're dumb woke cunts, that's why.
Well, I don't know if it's because they're dumb. It's just a matter of it wasn't set up that way. Right. And now to change people's attitudes, to change people's lifestyles is not something that's necessarily all that easy to do. You know, you got to change everything. Yeah. How are you going to parcel this back? Parcel this off? How are you going to sit up there and go, okay, we're going to start running roads here and making grids? You know, this stuff was put this way a long time ago. America was formed in an entirely different mentality. So anyway, that's enough about that. I just found it interesting. I'm sorry if I bored everybody to death. Many of the roads are not used, according to 8Jack.
Well, no, and the thing is, though, and wrapping it back around to the Iran situation, they are more grid-like than even Russia is, right? And they are an older civilization, but
all the civilization, they're quite modern in respect to their current sort of thing. Like Tehran and all that kind of stuff's a fairly new city in regards to it.
You
Like
can't.
we're talking about.
Right, though. They did enforce a grid system in their farming areas.
Yeah, but like Tehran's only a century old, if that. It's so the modern systems would be all over Iran.
The Tehran's right here, but you can see they don't have a lot of food either. But even there, you can also see that while they have grids, they've still got lots of old style parcels as well. So it hasn't completely changed. They're more true.
I'm actually not sure. This is an actual question. I am seeing a lot of desert on the map, but
Yes.
are they heavily mountainous or are they mainly desert? Like, are we looking at Nevada, Arizona type shit, or are we looking at something a little bit different?
It's all over the place. They've got
This is flat desert.
Plains. They got plains and flats. They got dunes.
This is mountain desert. Okay.
Yeah.
So they have both.
They got vegetated areas. I think you'll find it even fucking snows there sometimes.
But you can see there's huge tracts of just out there.
Well, okay, so, here's another question. You remember the guy that was hiking in Afghanistan and got caught on the Iranian border, and he was an American, and they captured him and tortured him. That's horrible, right? I'm not saying that's not horrible. But they kind of had a point, right? Why the fuck are you out here in the middle of nowhere, right by Iran when you're an American? Don't you know better? I think so, yeah. Up in the mountains. He was hiking in the mountains, supposedly, right?
These are mountainous areas here.
But they kind of have a point, right? Like, what are you doing, dude? I mean, it's like, yeah, can you go to North Korea? Sure. But why?
But should you?
Well, right. You got that part right. Should you? Well, I'm getting called for supper, guys. So I'm gonna have to
All right. Well, no, we'll wrap it up. The Iranian situation is ongoing. I'm sure we will be talking about it again. Thank you everybody for coming out. The World War I stream digressed into World War III. Thank you everybody. Good night, good luck, and may our bombs fall well.
Good night, everybody.
All right.